All right, welcome back to part five of the Gilded Age, or for you guys, part four. But anyway, this is labor and the progressive movement. All right, so in the last show, you saw some of the pictures regarding child labor. But anyway, in this one, we're talking about industrialization as a whole, the impact on working conditions for labor. When it says labor, it's talking about the people working. So long hours and low wages, especially for women and children, no job security, no benefits such as workman's comp, dangerous working conditions, including the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire, which you'll have an assignment on, and work related illnesses. But one positive is there are such a thing as company towns. Some companies actually created towns to lure people in to get them, a good benefit for a reason for them to go work for them. So that's kind of cool. We don't see too much of that today. So during this period, we have the formation of labor unions. What are the goals? Well, they want higher wages for the workers. They want the workers to work fewer hours and they want safer conditions. So, labor organizations include the Knights of Labor, led by Terence Powderly, the American Federation of Labor, led by Samuel Gompers, who we talked about in vocabulary. You have the American Railway Union, led by Eugene Debs, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters and Maids. Yeah, that's a nice name. Anyway, they're led by A. Philip Randolph and Chancellor Owens. So you have the Great Migration. After the Reconstruction, it continued through the 1920s, creating opportunities for African Americans in housing, education, and politics. By the turn of the 20th century, the vast majority of black Americans lived in southern states still, which is interesting. But I've heard even today a lot of people end up staying very close to where they were born. That's just something a lot of people don't like to travel. They're scared, I guess, but I guess I fit that category. It's not that I'm scared to travel, but I'm still living in the same place I've always lived. The widespread migration of African Americans moving, excuse me, from rural communities in the South to large cities in the North and the West. So, push factors. What that means is what is pushing African Americans away? What's making them move? That would be poor economic conditions in the South, intensified by limitations of sharecropping, farm failures, and crop damage. But the main thing would be Jim Crow laws, which is racial oppression. Okay, and on the flip side, what are the pull factors? What's bringing African Americans to other areas? So, encouraging reports of good wages and living conditions that appeared in African American newspapers, advertisements for housing and employments and firsthand stories of newfound success in the North and Western areas, such as the Chicago Defender. Other areas, such as Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, and New York City, saw large numbers of migrants coming for new opportunities. So, as part of the rise of labor unions, that also leads to strikes. So, the Haymarket Square riot happened in Chicago. It led to the demise of the Knights of Labor. We talked about that in vocabulary, and you'll see a couple pictures of the bomb, etc., coming up. Also, there's the Homestead strike by Carnegie Steel workers and the Pullman strike by railroad workers. So, this is a picture that appeared in the newspaper showing the Haymarket Square riot. And this is a replica of the bomb that was used. You can see it's held together by a screw, and then they filled it with the insides of dynamite, which would be nitroglycerin, and it has the fuse that was lit. So the casing is what created shrapnel. This is the police officers' memorial for those officers that died during the Haymarket Square riot. And the next picture coming up is what's called the Martyrs Monument. So the Martyrs Monument is basically dedicated to the five people who were put to death that were later found really didn't have anything to do with it. Buried with their remains underneath that monument are actually things that the families collected to help prove their innocence. So, what did labor unions gain? Well, they got work hours limited. So, today, you know that we pretty much work 8 hours a day. Anything over that or for 40 hours a week is overtime. It also regulated working conditions. So there has to be safety concerns, etc. But you can't just work in a sweatshop, where you're going to be dehydrated. It just made work a much more safe place compared to what it was. The progressive movement sought to reform the economic, political, and social systems of the United States through government regulation and oversight. We've talked about that several times. Some people do not want government oversight. For example, we talked about laissez faire economics, where business owners don't want the government involved. Well, the progressive movement wants the government involved because they want, or actually, they don't trust businesses to do the right thing, so they want oversight. So, what are the causes of the progressive movement? Economic exploitation. So, there's the formation of trusts and monopolies and the exploitation of natural resources. Political corruption, formation of political machines, maintaining power through bribes and voter intimidation. Seems like we have maybe not the same issues, but some of those issues still today. But there's also social injustice. We have child labor, living conditions, consumer protection, racial, gender, and ethnic equality. So if you're wondering what consumer protection is, today we have the Better Business Bureau. Even if you go to Amazon, there's reviews that people give. So if they have a bad experience, they put their reviews there. But just like anything on the flip side, you know that people put fake reviews and they're compensated for them. So you really can't ever trust anything. So just a picture to show people on strike. And again, organized labor, that's their main weapon, is to go on strike and stop working. If they're not working, the company's not making money. So, what are the goals of the progressive movement? They want to increase economic opportunity. They want to increase democracy. They want more people voting. And they want to increase social justice, meaning they don't want minorities and poor people to be the only ones who go to jail, etc. Next, we have muckraking progressive leaders. So, we talked about muckrakers and vocabulary. Muckrakers, are progressives whose investigative literature exposed abuses in economics, politics, and society. Ida Tarbell writes a book called The History of the Standard Oil Company, Lincoln Steffens, The Shame of the Cities, and Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, which is about the meatpacking industry. Okay, here we have a series of pictures from this time period. Most of these are by a man named Jacob Riis. He became very famous with his iPhone minus 40. And anyway, he takes a lot of pictures of very, very poor people. You can see these look like they're just parts of people's houses, but in some cases, that's all of their houses. Like in that picture, you're looking at their bathroom and their kitchen sink in the same photo. If you can hear my neighbor's dog barking, sorry. So you can see an entire family, or actually an extended family, living in a one-bedroom apartment. Again, there's their bathroom right there in the middle of the floor. Lots of pictures of children that are homeless. Maybe that's a homeless dog. So this is some child labor. Looks like the kid had someone tell him what's up with that black eye there. But again, very sad. You had lots of young kids working. This is one of the most famous pictures of the Gilded Age. It's by Jacob Riis, and you can see how crowded the conditions were. This one is particularly sad for me. You have young kids, no family, laying by a steam vent so they can stay warm in the winter. You'll see several pictures similar to this. This guy's living in a shack, no solid floor. He basically has farming going on inside where he's living. So this guy's sleeping on top of a couple of barrels, obviously to keep the rats off of him, but I don't know if he knows, but they can climb. But anyway, that's just terrible. Sad thing is, today we still have people living like in subway stations and underground. I saw a video of people underground in Las Vegas. Another family, they look like they actually have a nice place compared to the others, but it's still an extended family living in a one bedroom apartment. I think this is a repeat of the other picture, but there is another one. All right, this is a playground during the Gilded Age, which I'm sure they're lucky just to have a playground at all. But if you notice there's a question, you need to type that answer. What do you think? Why do they have wheelbarrows to play with? There is a reason, but you need to type what you think is the answer in your packet. Here we go. Here's another group of kids laying by uh, a steam vent. So all these children here are praying. This is actually a Christian orphanage. And you can look in the background and see that there is a woman back there that is their caretaker. So that happens a lot with children through this time period. Their parents die because disease, again, there's not as many vaccinations and things like that. So parents die, kids are left without anybody, they're left on the street. They end up working, but sometimes some organizations take them in. All right, next we have progressive accomplishments on the national level, so economic. The earlier Sherman Antitrust Act prevented any business structure that restrains trade, for example, monopolies. We talked about that in class. We mentioned the Sherman Antitrust Act during the Titanic movie. The Clayton Antitrust Act expanded upon the Sherman Antitrust Act by exempting unions from prosecution under the Sherman Act, and it outlawed price fixing. If you don't know what price fixing is, unfortunately, it does kind of happen still today. But imagine if all the video game companies got together and said, hey, we're going to make sure all our games are the same price. Oh, wait, they do that. Yeah, and nobody's done anything about it. It is against the law. But again, price fixing is when companies get together and they help each other out by agreeing to all have the same price for a product. That way, they all make that same amount of money. And last, we have the Federal Reserve System was established. I'm not going to lie, the Federal Reserve is an interesting thing, but it's complicated, and I'm not going to try to get into that in one of these videos. We'll definitely discuss it when I get back. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about the Federal Reserve, so you'll enjoy that. All right, so next up we have national legislation continued political. So primary elections are established. So we have that now. For example, the Republican Party, Joe Biden is an incumbent president, so unless he decides not to run, he will most likely be the nominee. However, for the Republican Party, they're going to have three, four people that want to be president. So they're going to have debates against each other and then a primary election, etc. Whoever wins that, they will be the one that runs for president against Joe Biden, or if he decides not to run for a second term, then someone else. Third party parties also have primaries, but we just don't hear about them because I know most of you have said we have a two-party system. We really don't. That's just something people believe in. They believe that the only options are the Democrats and the Republicans, so therefore no one pays any attention, including the media, to the other parties out there, like the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, or whatever. Next, the 17th Amendment was passed, establishing the direct election of United States senators. It used to be in the past the state would basically elect their own senators, but now uh, we go vote for them. So you are going to vote for your senators, hopefully. The 19th Amendment was enacted, providing women with the right to vote finally. Efforts to gain the right to vote were realized through the strong leadership of the women's movement by Carrie Chapman Catt and Alice Paul, as well as the nation's recognition of women's wartime contributions during World War One, which we'll talk about a little bit next unit. All right, this little graphic here, it says a century of muckraking key moments. Um, I might ask you a couple questions for one of the side assignments on this. So take a look at that. You might want to pause it, read it over. There's a few things that we will be talking about later in the year, including that 1972 Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein uncovered the Watergate scandal. So we definitely will get into that. All right, now we have social contributions, consumer protection, enacted the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act. I know we briefly discussed that in most classes. And alcohol consumption, passage of the 18th Amendment, better known as Prohibition. Later, the amendment was repealed by the 21st Amendment. And we'll talk about this in much more detail, especially in Unit 10, which is one of the most exciting units of the year, right before we get into World War II, which most of you will love. But again, the whole point here, consumer protection. As a consumer, which is us, we buy things, we consume products. There are protections for us now. Again, the Meat Inspection Act, so you know you're getting hamburger if it says hamburger on it, or at least you hope. Okay, next, these are progressive accomplishments at the state level. So initiative and referendum, I'm going to leave that a secret because you're going to have an assignment based on those. That'll be really fun for you, I'm sure. So anyway, then we have recall. This is basically where the voters vote to remove political officials, which is pretty cool. If we're not happy with someone, if we have the right to recall, we can vote to do that. Then there's secret ballot. Obviously, in the past, people would vote and you would know who voted for who, which led to bullying, rioting, etc. Now you have secret ballot, which is how we do it now. When you guys go to vote for the first time, you'll go behind a curtain and you'll fill out the ballot, and no one will know that you did it, or I'm sorry, who you voted for unless you tell them.